Hello, my friends. Eric here. Today I'm responding to a request by one of my Twitter ex-followers who asked if I could do a quick review on genetic endogamy. I have previously recorded a longer video, and I encourage you to check it out. So when you think about your family tree, what do you picture? Probably this huge branching thing, right? With thousands of unique ancestors spreading out generation after generation. You've got 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 grandparents, and it just keeps going. You go back just 10 generations, and mathematically, you should have over 1,000 ancestors. You go back 20 generations, that's over 1 million people that you are genetically related to. But what if I told you that for millions of people all over the world, that math just doesn't add up? What if their family tree isn't a tree at all? What if instead it loops and twists back on itself it's more like a wreath? This is the fascinating and often confusing reality of genealogical endogamy. It's a phenomenon that means you might share the same great grandparents with your entire town, and sometimes in dozens of different ways. It's a concept that flips our basic ideas about ancestry upside down and explains why so many DNA results are tangled, complicated, and today we're going to try to untangle that mess. So what is genealogical endogamy? Well, the formal definition is the cultural practice of marrying inside a specific group for a very long time. And let's be clear, we're not just talking about a one-off case of cousins getting married. We're talking about an entire community that is defined by its region, geography, or culture, where for centuries almost everyone married someone from within that same group. This could happen because of religious laws, being geographically stuck on an island or in a remote mountain valley, social pressure, or even just a simple lack of anyone else to marry. And after many, many generations of this, the dating pool gets pretty small, and you end up with folks who are already related to you, and they're usually as distant cousins. The result is something that is called pedigree collapse. And this is where your family tree literally starts to fold in on itself. So instead of having 32 unique great-great-great-grandparents, you might only have 28 or 25. Why? Well, because the same couple shows up in your tree multiple times through different kids. In really endogamous groups, this effect is quite dramatic. You might find a single ancestral couple from the 1600s popping up in your family tree 10, 20, or even more times. So now it's really important to distinguish this from incest, which involves immediate family. Endogamy is typically about marriages between distant cousins. You can think third cousins are even further out here. The catch is that because pattern repeats over and over and over, the genetic material inside the community just gets recycled. Everybody becomes a cousin to everybody else many times over. And this creates a genetic signature that is both fascinating and incredibly tricky to analyze, as we're about to see. The textbook example of an endogamous population is the Ashkenazi Jews. Their history is one of migration and incredible community strength, often in the face of outside pressures. They originated from Jewish communities in the Rhineland of Germany and France during the Middle Ages. Then they moved east into Poland in nearby regions, forming their own distinct culture. For centuries, a combination of religious tradition and social restrictions meant that Ashkenazi Jews almost exclusively married other Ashkenazi Jews. This created a relatively small and isolated gene pool. And in fact, a huge portion of the entire Ashkenazi population, now over 10 million people strong, can trace its maternal ancestry back to a very surprisingly small number of founding mothers in medieval Europe, whose own roots trace back to the Middle East. So what does this do to your DNA results? It means that any two people with Ashkenazi Jewish heritage are probably related in tons of different distant ways. Their DNA will show lots of small shared segments inherited from dozens of common ancestors. All those little pieces add up and inflate the total amount of shared DNA, making people look much closer relatives than they actually are. A fifth cousin might show up on a DNA test looking like a second or third cousin in this case. The effect is so strong that the big DNA companies like Ancestry and MyHeritage had to create very special algorithms that just to handle this. For example, MyHeritage requires a bigger than normal DNA segment to even call it a match between two people with significant Ashkenazi ancestry. Ancestry has a tool that basically dials down the total shared DNA to give you more realistic relationship estimates. And without these fixes, an Ashkenazi Jewish person's match list would just be a tidal wave of thousands of close relatives, making it virtually impossible to do any real genealogy. So, but this isn't just one, it isn't just one group's story. Endogamy, it's a global phenomenon, and while the reasons change, the genetic result is always pretty similar. For example, let's take the Acadians of Eastern Canada. These were French settlers in what's now Nova Scotia, and back in the 17th century, for hundreds of years they were pretty isolated. But then, in the mid-1700s, the British expelled them in what is known as the Great Deportation, or the La Grande Derangement. Many of these families ended up settling together in new places, most famously in Louisiana, becoming the Cajuns. And this shared history of a small founding group followed by being displaced and resettling in tight-knit communities, created intense endogamy. And it's not rare for someone of Acadian descent to trace their family back to a single 17th century couple through 6 or more of that couple's children. So you see the same pattern with French Canadians who descend from a small number of founders in Quebec. Their DNA is so interwoven that genealogists call it a tangled web, where basically everyone is a distant cousin to everyone else. And this story repeats itself all over the world. Geographic isolation was a huge factor, and people living on islands like Newfoundland, Puerto Rico, or in Polynesia had a natural limited marriage pool, and the same goes for people in remote mountain areas like the Italian Alps or Appalachia. Even early colonial American populations had some form of endogamy, and when a small group of English or German settlers started a new town, their kids and grandkids often had to marry within that same founding group for a few generations. And of course, religious communities that separate themselves from the outside world, like the Amish, for example, or the Mennonites, are defined by endogamy. In every single case, the result is the same. The family tree becomes a virtual family wreath. So, okay, this is where the theory gets personal. You spit in a tube, you get your results, and you're staring at a total mess. If you have endogamous roots, you're probably facing a few key challenges here. First, you have way more shared DNA with your matches than you should. Remember, you and a match might share DNA not from one recent common ancestor, but from a dozen different distant relatives. All those tiny DNA bits add up, and the testing company's algorithm predicts a much closer relationship than it's actually true. A match who is your fifth cousin 10 times over might look like a second cousin on paper, and this makes it super hard to figure out which matches are actually important. Second, you will have a ridiculous number of matches. People from endogamous groups can have thousands upon thousands of matches, and most of them are distant cousins. And since you're all pulling from that same genetic well, you share little DNA segments with a huge chunk of the community you live in. And trying to sort through that is like trying to find a needle in a haystack made of other needles. Third, those automated clustering tools often just give up. You know the tools that group your matches into clusters representing different family branches, right? So for someone with endogamous ancestry, they often just create one big giant tangled cluster. And that's because your matches are related to you on both your mom's and your dad's side, making it impossible for the algorithm to sort them out. Seeing that giant cluster it's just a dead giveaway. Your family tree it's like I said, it's like a Christmas wreath. So what's the takeaway here? The standard rules of genetic genealogy often don't apply, and the amount of shared DNA is no longer reliable as a clue for a recent relationship, and you have to use a completely different set of strategies just to get anywhere. So if you think endogamy is messing with your results, are you doomed? Well, absolutely not. You just need a different toolkit. Genealogists who specialize in this have figured out some key strategies. First, you have to adjust your standards. Instead of looking at the total amount of shared DNA, focus on the length of the longest shared segment. A real recent relationship, like a true second cousin, will almost always include at least one long, continuous piece of shared DNA. And those dozens of tiny segments that you share with distant cousins, they're just background noise. And many experts say to ignore matches that don't share, and this is key, at least one segment of 15 or even 20 centimorgans that helps filter out that static. Next, go old school with traditional genealogy. DNA alone is not going to solve this puzzle. You have to build out your paper trail as far back as you can. Look for surnames, look for hometowns that show up over and over again in your matches. Find those patterns of your ancestors living in the same tiny town or going to the same church for generations. And this is the context. This is everything. Third, use more advanced tools. So techniques like chromosome mapping, where you can visually paint your chromosomes with DNA from known ancestors, can be a huge help for you. And tools like DNA Painter let you see which parts of your DNA come from which family lines, helping you slowly untangle the different ways that you're related to a single match. And then finally, test your relatives. Testing known second or third cousins or older relatives like great aunts and uncles, it's a game changer. And by comparing their DNA to yours, you can start to figure out which matches belong to which specific branches of your family. It brings order to the chaos, and it takes patience, but you can absolutely have those breakthroughs. So let's circle back to where we started. For most of human history and for most people on Earth, the family tree was really a family wreath. This idea of a constantly expanding tree with thousands of unique ancestors, it's really mostly a modern thing. And it's made possible by mass migration and the breakdown of small, isolated communities. Genealogical endogamy isn't a weird exception. It's a core part of human history that's driven by geography, religion, and culture. It's the story of islanders in the Pacific, French settlers in Canada, Jewish communities in Europe, and colonial families on the American frontier. And understanding this concept is the key to unlocking your own family's story. If you come from one of these groups, it explains why your DNA results are so complex and why you have so many matches and why the relationship predictions can be so off. It challenges you to become a better genealogist and to look beyond the simple numbers and to embrace just the beautiful tangled complexity of your own heritage. Your DNA, it doesn't just tell a story about you, it tells the story of your people. Realizing your family tree is a wreath isn't a dead end. It's actually an invitation to explore the history of your entire community, a community that is quite literally one big extended family. And if you're finding this dive into ancestry and DNA interesting, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button for more stories hidden in our genes. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you seen signs of endogamy in your own family research? Do your DNA matches look like one giant tangled cluster? Share your community or your story in the comments below. Your experience might just be the clue someone else needs to untangle their own family wreath. And I encourage you to look at our longer video, which goes into more detail. Thanks for watching, and until next time, this is Eric with Trace Your New England Roots, where history starts with your family.